Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda. Jai Shri Radhe Govinda, Jai Shri Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Jai Shri Gauranitai, Jai Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jayo Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much. Welcome everyone. Hare Krishna. Okay, Hare Krishna everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you for coming. We have like 3 more days after today. So fast. Let's start. Amagyantimirandasya Jnananjan Shalakaya Chakshurudmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. He Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinbandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namastate Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishbhanuste Devi Pranamami Hari Priyayi. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, what was the name of chapter 14? Chapter 14 name, please. What was the name of chapter 14?
The 3 modes of material nature.
Thank you. 3 modes of material nature. Okay, now you can raise your hand if you remember what were the 6 questions that Arjun asked to Krishna in chapter 13. What were the 6 questions that Arjun asked Krishna in chapter 13? And what is the name of chapter 13? You can raise your hand. Am I audible? Harshita, am I audible?
Yes, Mataji, you're audible, but your voice is echoing.
Is it better?
Yes, Mataji, better.
Okay, so thank you. What was the name? 6 questions asked by Arjun to Krishna in chapter 13. Only one person? Yes, Mataji.
No. Kshetra Yog, and what is Purush, what is Prakriti, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragya, what is knowledge, what is the object of knowledge.
Gyan and Gyanam. Thank you, Mataji. What were the 8 questions asked by Arjun to Krishna in chapter 8? You can write to me in the chat also. What is the name of chapter 8? What is the name of chapter 8? Nobody. What is the name of chapter 8?
Attaining the Supreme.
Very nice. Thank you. What were the 8 questions asked by Arjun to Krishna in chapter 8? No one has written to me in the chat also. And there is no one raising the hand also. What question did Arjun ask to Krishna yesterday in chapter 14? 3 modes of material nature. What was his question? Yes, Mataji. Usha Kiran Mataji.
Hare Krishna,
Mataji.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Can you repeat the question, Mataji?
What was the question asked by Arjun to Krishna yesterday? 14th chapter. What did he ask?
Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga.
Or if you know the 8 questions that Arjun asked to Krishna in chapter 8, that's fine too.
8th chapter is how to remember Krishna at the time of death, Mataji.
Okay. What else?
How to overcome these 3 modes of material nature.
Which chapter was that?
That is the chapter 14, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga.
Okay.
8th question is about Brahma, Karma,
Brahman.
Prakriti.
What did you say? Dharma?
Karma. In
Karma.
8th chapter, Mataji, Karma, Adi Daiva, Adi Yagna, and Adi Daiva, Adi Yagna, Adhyatma.
5, and then 6th is Prayankali Smaranam. Okay, and then 7 and 8, 2 more. Okay, thank you, Mataji. Thank you for trying.
Okay.
So your class is not participating that much. Okay, I'll also keep going. So Purushottam Yoga is today's class, Yoga of the Supreme Person. Let's pay our obeisances to Shri Radha Govinda before we start. This is what we did yesterday, conditioning of the modes, characteristic action and death in the modes, and transcending the modes. This is the chapter today, becoming detached from the material world. Krishna described the intricacies of the material world and how the material world is decorated with the 3 modes of material nature. And then he describes this world further as an upside down banyan tree and how the modes are acting in each part of the banyan tree. Then transmigration of the soul from one part of the tree to another part of the tree. Then Krishna is the maintainer, and then summary of Vedanta Sutra. This is the first verse. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhvamulam Adoshakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandam Siyasya Parnani Yastam Vedasa Vedavit. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree which has its roots upward and its branches down, whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is a knower of the Vedas. Basically, he is comparing this material world. It's a comparison of the material world to an upside down banyan tree. Why he chose banyan tree? It'll become clear in few moments, because banyan tree is very dense. It is spread all over. If you have ever been inside the banyan tree, you would have realized that how dense and thick and how widespread it is. The other trees are not so widespread, but it looks like a little house or sometimes a big mansion. And it's very, very old also, right? So he's saying this world is compared to a imperishable banyan tree, which is upside down, means the root is up and the branches are down, and the leaves of the tree are compared to the Vedic hymns. And one who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So this is a tree, and where do we find an upside down tree? Do we have an experience of an upside down tree? Do you have an experience of something which is upside down? The tree which is upside down.
Reflection in the water. The tree by the side of a river, you can see the reflection in the water. So the tree will be upside down.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. So, so reflection of the real tree is a spiritual world, but the reflection of it is in this material world. And the roots, so roots are up and the branches are down. Okay, and the root is where the origin of the tree happens, right? So the origin of the tree is from Brahmalok. This is a comparative analogy. So to explain something, Krishna is using this comparative analogy of a tree where roots are up, which is Brahmalok. And then the banyan tree, the tree has one particular trunk, and then it has branches, and then it has twigs, right? And then it has fruits, then it has leaves, then it has subsidiary roots also. So every part of the tree is explained to some part of the other of the material world. So root is Brahmalok, and then leaves are Vedic hymns, and then the fruits are religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. They're compared to that. The fruits is compared to that. Then the twigs are compared to sense objects. You can see the sense objects. Then the branches are compared to the branches which are up are compared to the upper planetary system. Branches which are coming down is compared to the lower planetary systems. You see the upper branches, the devatas are sitting. You see this Gandharvas, Indra, or Mother Saraswati, all these Lord Ganesha. So everyone is on the upper planetary, upper part of the tree. But as you come down, we see human beings, we see lower species like the animal, there's a horse, there's a cow, there's a tiger, deer, snakes. Go further down, the living entities which are grossly in ignorance are there, like a snake or dog or chameleon or tortoise. Like, and you go further down, so it's very, very thick. Okay, and then subsidiary roots. These, you see these subsidiary roots which are coming. Banyan tree has subsidiary roots, up the roots which are going towards upward, or from the upper branches, the subsidiary roots which are branching out are compared to pious acts. And then the subsidiary root which is coming from the lower branches is called as impious acts. So pious and impious act both are a part of this thick material world, which is colored by the three modes of material nature. What are the three modes of material nature? What are they? Three modes of material nature. Can you name them? At least this
Good,
question can be
mode of
answered by
goodness,
everyone.
goodness, passion, and ignorance.
Ignorance.
Thank you. So goodness, passion, ignorance are the three modes of material nature. So goodness is up, passion is somewhere in the middle, and as we go down, it is ignorance. And this is how it colors this world. Prabhupada explains this as Vichitra. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the word is used as Vichitra. Vichitra means variety. So all this world around us is filled with variety. And what is making it so vivacious or so or giving us so many options to choose from? Nothing but three modes of material nature. So where is the real tree? Where is the real tree? The real tree is the spiritual world. Okay, as somebody answered that the reflection of a tree in the water is upside down. So we can understand that the reflection is based on something, right? Over there, the reflection is based on the water. What is this reflection based on? The reflection, can you look at the picture and answer me? This is the real tree. This place is compared to the real tree, and this place is compared to the reflection. Okay, so what is the base, or what is the base where reflection is based on? Yes, Vijaya Mataji answered already. So Mataji, you can write in the chat, but someone else has to raise hand now. I am not going to go further if we don't get an answer. We can call off the class. Yes, what is the reflection based on? Even if you don't answer it correctly, attempt, please. Is my question clear? Is my question clear? If my question is not clear, you can raise your hand and I'm happy to clarify. Harshita, Anvya, Mataji, is my question clear or am I confusing?
Mataji, it's clear.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Some people are answering. Okay. Dr. Shashi Tiwari said it right. Reflection is based on desire. You can see here, right? The interface is desire. So it is a desire of a soul which makes it come to the material world or go back to the spiritual world. The interface on which this reflection is based is a desire. Okay. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. Okay, so this is important that as the root is nourished by water, by nutrients from the earth, what is this root nourished by, from which everything is coming out? This root is nourished by three modes of material nature. The twigs are objects of senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to fruitive actions of human society. Okay, so this is just a comparative. I've already spoken about it, but the reflection is based on interface of desire. The root is Brahmalok, and then there are secondary roots which represents the pious and impious acts of the human society. And then we said that the upper branches are upper planetary system, lower branches are lower planetary system. The leaves are Vedic hymns, the twigs are sense objects, the tips of branches are the senses, and then the fruits are dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma is religiosity, artha is economic development, kama is sense gratification, and moksha is liberation. And the living entities, what are living entities doing? The living entities which are on the top of the tree, middle of the tree, lower end of the tree. When we say that somebody is going to the heavenly planet, what are the living entities doing? Living entities are just jumping from one part of the tree to another part, to another part, to another part. But the problem is that Krishna wants us to cut this tree and come out of it altogether. But we are very busy in doing so-called pious and impious acts and trying to improve our material condition. But that just, keeps us in this Vichitra planet. Again, this is nourished by three modes of material nature. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world, right? The real form of the tree is in the spiritual world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, and or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this tree with a weapon of detachment. Doing, one must seek that place from which, having gone once, one never returns. And there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything has begun and in whom everything is abiding since time immemorial. You see, this person, this devotee, is very busy in cutting the Tridena Shastrena, Chitva, Tridena Shastrena. The verse is, I don't remember, the one word is missing, but Tridena Shastrena, what it means is that cut these roots, cut it and come out and then go to the real world. Don't get so entangled in this world, upper, lower, middle, that you forget the real goal. Then Krishna is asking us to come to the real world, right? Krishna is saying that so doing, one must seek that place from which, having gone once, one never returns. So now he's going to give the explanation of that, how that world looks like. For example, if you go on a vacation, okay, and you're going somewhere, you're not just gonna go. There's gonna be a plan, right? You're gonna take off from work, make sure that if you have children, their school is on break. Make sure that you have a reservation before you go in a hotel. Are you gonna do these arrangements, or you're just gonna get up and go and then?
Yes, Mataji.
So
do the arrangements.
Do the arrangement. A sober person will do the arrangement. A person influenced by a lot of mode of passion will be very impulsive. But a sober person will do the arrangement and will try to figure out that where am I going? What is it that I have to see there? Like that, Krishna is now going to give us a glimpse of where he's inviting us to. This is where he's inviting us. Na tad bhashyate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yat gatvanani vartante tad dhama paramam mama. That abode of mine is not illumined by sun or moon, nor by electricity. One who reaches it never returns to this planet. So this is material world. Material world is dark. If there is no sun, if there is no moon, then this planet is dark, right? We are so proud of our power of vision, or of our power of discrimination. But imagine if there was no sun, this vision has no power, right? So, but spiritual world is effulgent. There is no need for sun and moon. As a conditioned soul finds it very hard to believe that there can be a planet, because we don't have any faith. But it doesn't matter whether we have faith or not, but the things are fact. This is a fact. For example, if somebody is driving a car on the road and they don't know the rules and regulations of the driving, does it mean that there are no rules and regulations, or does it mean that they just don't know about it? What does it mean?
Just don't know.
They just
They
don't
just
know.
don't know about it. So it doesn't matter whether they know or they don't know, but the things are there. So Shastras don't lie to us. There is no reason for Shastras or scriptures to lie to us. There's no need, there's no want that they have to fulfill by lying. Only thing is that they want to attract us. Krishna says that that part is self-illumined, doesn't need, is not dependent on sun or moon. And it is so beautiful that if one goes there, one would not want to come back. मामेवांश जीवलोके जीवभूता सनातनः mana shashtendriyani prakriti sthani karshati. So in this particular verse, the very important verse, Prabhupada gives a big purport to this verse. Krishna is talking about the position of the living entities in relation to him. So he's saying mam eva ansha. Ansha means part. Mam means mine. So the living entity, jiva, these living entities are my part and parcel. So jiva bhuta sanatanaha, they are eternally fragmented. Okay, that means that Krishna is making it very clear that the soul never becomes one with the super soul. It remains eternally a different person. Eternal relation, even if it is in the conditioned world, or when it goes back to Krishna in the spiritual world, there also it remains a separate individual. So mana shashta indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. Karshati means is struggling. But in the material world, because of the conditioning of the three modes, it's struggling very hard with 6 shashta indriyani, 6 indriyas and mind. Okay, so the living entity in this conditioned world are my fragmental parts, eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with 6 senses, which include the mind. So Krishna knows that we are struggling. Who can say that they have not had any reverses in their life, that they didn't have to struggle? Anything. Everything was served to them on the plate. They didn't have to do anything. Is there anybody in this class who can say that? Anybody? Or in the world? If there is a world, no one can. This is the words of Krishna. Thank you. So these are the words of Krishna. So Krishna's words are eternally true, not only amongst the human beings, but other species of life, and also in upper planetary and lower planetary system. This is the power of the word of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that nobody can defy. We can experience it, but the intelligent person will learn from the higher authorities rather than waiting for an experience to happen in their own life. There's a little bit of a discussion about struggling. What struggle is Krishna talking about, which will be made clear in the following verses. But the struggle that Krishna talks about here is the living entity struggling in this body, because there are 6 senses and mind. And also it's a struggle for a living entity or the soul to transmigrate from one body to another body. So this body, we struggle with the mind and 6 senses. And then the next body, because we have to change the body, there is inconvenience, and that's a struggle too. But Krishna says, actually, they're not supposed to struggle, but they're struggling. Shariram yada vapnoti yacha api utkrimat ishvaraha grihit vaitani samyati vayur gandhan ivashayad. The living entity in the material world carries these different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries the aroma. This is very nice. What it means is that you see, we carry the conception. For example, if somebody is sitting in this body, and the body is a male body, or a body is a female body, then we get carried away by the conception that I am a male, or I am a female, or I am a cow, or I am a bird. Every single living entity is conditioned or by this concept, or is carried away by this concept, and it continues. when we leave this so-called male body, so-called female body, so-called animal body, so-called bird body, tree body, this fish body, okay, then we get to another body, and then we acquire that conception that this is what I am, and then we get to another body, we carry that conception. In this life also, our conceptions change. You see, in we're little girl or boy, oh, we are little children. This is a conception that I'm a little child. Then we are young. I'm young. I'm young because I have a young body, so I'm young. And then, oh, now I'm middle aged because the body is middle aged. And then, oh, now I'm old because the body is old. Or now I am the relative of so and so, or my job designation is so and so. All these conceptions keep on floating in our consciousness. Yes or no? This is Krishna's word. It cannot be false.
Yes.
It's very much true. And I just keep asking you, not that I'm seeking validation of Krishna's word, but I want you to think. I want to request you to think and personalize it. Okay, because just talking about Bhagavad Gita is not enough. You have to see where it is applying to your life. That's Vigyan. Gyan is one thing, knowledge. Vigyan is something which gives life to the knowledge, which is application of the knowledge. So apply it. That we are carried away by this. This is correct, Krishna. I can see it. As the air carries aromas, when the air touches the rose garden, it carries the aroma of the roses. When it touches the garbage can, it carries the aroma of the garbage. When it touches, what is it, the fish market, it carries the aroma of the fish market. Right? So, but is the air really is carrying it? But is the air really one with it? Does it define the air, or does it define the place where the air touched?
No. No,
What does
Mataji.
it define? The aroma in the air defines what?
Place with the touch.
Place the
Conception.
air touch. Very nice. Thank you. Similarly, our designation constitutionally now don't defines where the soul has touched, and there's so many of that that we have crossed already. Krishna continues, the living entity thus taking another gross body obtains a certain type of ear, tongue and nose and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular sense object, particular set of sense objects. So it is all grouped about the mind. If the mind is in the mode of goodness, we get a certain pair of senses around it. If the mind is in the mode of passion, we get it around that. If the mind is in the mode of good ignorance, then we get it like that. Right? So it is adhisthya manas situated in the mind. We get the sense of hearing, shrotram, chakshu, sparshanam, rasanam, grahanam. So it's important to train the mind. Utkrimatvam sthitham vapi bhunjan vagunan vitam vimudhananu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish mudha cannot understand. Vimudhananu pashyanti, cannot understand how a living entity, what can I not understand? And how a living entity can quit his body. Nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So see, Bhunjanam is a spell. Like somebody has casted a spell on someone. And then they, I think in Disney movies, they show it like they cast a spell. And then under the influence of the spell, the person is acting something else. Right? They're not that. Can you see how Krishna is using this word spell of the modes of nature? Can you relate to it? Like somebody cast a spell or magic on someone and then they forget who they are and now they have to act under the spell. So that's what these modes do to us. And a person who is not in knowledge cannot understand that how is this happening. But a person who is in knowledge, whose eyes are trained in knowledge, can clearly see all this. Very simple. We have this in experience in our own life in other avenues also. For example, so Harshita is a lawyer, right? So if we bring up a case in front of a common person, then the common person will just share their opinions that, okay, this person did this person did that, but this is not supposed to be done like this. But if you take the same scenario to her, who's trained to see what needs to be seen, then the concept will be completely different, right? Or if there's somebody who's the doctor, if the doctor can see that what is going on in the body, or at least can actually jot down the possibilities, but other people will just go on giving opinion because they're not trained, right or wrong?
Saji.
So
Right.
knowledge
Yes.
is powerful. Knowledge is powerful. It actually gives us a sense of understanding and sobriety. A person who is not in knowledge only lives in the air of opinions and opinions and opinions and opinions and speculation. But the real knowledge grounds us to the reality. Okay, so see, if this is a car and it's broken and this person doesn't know what happened, even though he is trying to figure out what happened, but he still can't figure out. But you take it to the mechanic, how easily they figure it out, because the eyes are trained in knowledge. So the endeavoring transcendentalist who is situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. What is this all this clearly Krishna is talking about? But those who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to see it. What is this? What I'm just checking if everyone is awake. So can see all this clearly. What is Krishna talking about? What is this all this clearly here? Nobody. We just studied it. Like, what does this all this clearly mean here? Endeavoring
Self-realization. Self-realization. Self-realization.
No. Just the endeavoring transcendentalist who is situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. So what is this all clearly? What he can see? What can he see?
Modes.
No.
तुक्के मत लगाओ. Movement
of the living entities from one life to another, from one
very nice. Very
branch to
nice.
another.
You hit the nail. Whoever said that, you hit the nail that on the right spot. That movement of the living entity. That's what we're saying, right? It's a continuation. That foolish cannot understand what sort of body he enjoys and cannot understand how a living entity is quitting this body, right? This is all this, can see all this. So, but a self-realized person who's even endeavoring transcendentalist, who's not really like has become an expert, can realize all this. Others cannot, though they may try to. So Naminishta Prabhu explains Shamshan Vairagya. Shamshan Vairagya is like if somebody goes to the cremation ground and sees the body of the dear or near one burnt or offered to the fire in the Antim Sanskar, the last Sanskar of human life, then they become detached. Like there's an element of detachment which naturally comes. That see, this is the end of life. This is what is waiting for me also. Okay, and then they stay in that detachment for a few days. But after some days, because they're not situated in knowledge, they say, okay, bahut ho gaya. It's enough. Now get me a cup of tea and let me get my mind off of it. Let me watch some TV. Right? So basically, because why is this person seeking something else? You were just in the element of detachment. How come you became attached again? Because this person doesn't have a spiritual foundation. Person is not seeking the real answer, is depending on mind to tell what is what. Okay, now Krishna, what did we discuss so far? So we discussed so far that Krishna has Mataji, Savita Karan Mataji, all this is the preceding verse in verse number 10, Krishna says that, right? Foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit this body, number 1. Number 2, how this living entity is enjoying the body under spell of modes of nature. Says, but one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So this is all these two things.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so far what did we discuss? We discussed that that Krishna is comparing this world to an upside down banyan tree, which has its roots upward and its branches downward. And then he explains a little bit about the varieties that a living entity enjoys in this banyan tree, and is trying to improvise its living conditions under the spell of modes of nature. we have a right to improvise our living condition. I'm not saying we should not, but we should not we should we yeah, we should actually, because it's a non-negotiable act. We should improve something which will last for forever. We should work on that. Okay, not something which is going to bring me to another material platform. And then he discussed that actually come to me, because that's where you really belong. And then he's giving the information of his planet, that it's not dependent on sun or moon. It is self-illuminated. One who goes there never returns to this planet. And then he explains that the living entity who is living in this body is struggling very hard with the body, which includes mind and six senses. And then we are carrying the conception of this body from one life to another, as the aroma is carried by the air. And I explained that what does that conception mean? That if I'm situated in a female body, then I get like drawn with that okay, I'm the female. If somebody's sitting in a male body, then I'm male. Or somebody's sitting in a cow body, okay, I'm a cow. So these conceptions are carrying us from one body to another body to another body to another body. Krishna says that a person, vimudha nanu pashyanti, a person who's vimudha or foolish cannot understand what's going on, even though they may try to. Okay, and then Krishna is now going to tell us that how he is a maintainer. He's a maintainer of a gross body. He's a maintainer of our subtle body. He's a maintainer of our soul also. How? Krishna is going to explain now from 12th verse onwards. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this world, comes from me. And the splendor of moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Who can say this? Can anyone in this class say that the sun is shining because I have given it its splendor? The moon is shining because I have given it.
No, Mataji.
We cannot, because only Krishna, Tvam Ekam, only Krishna can say, only because Krishna has done it. It's not an element of pride, it's an element of fact. If I'm giving this class and tomorrow I say that yes, I gave that class, so will you say that that I am proud, or this is a fact? I'm stating facts. What will be the answer?
It's a fact.
It's a fact.
Or you take it on you that you are attending this class, participating in the class, either yes, actively or passively. So is that an element of pride that you're doing this, or it's a fact?
It's a fact.
It's a fact. The other people who think that Krishna is pride is because they are proud. We reflect. There's a word for it. The word for it, this kind of a concept, is called reflective consciousness. Reflective consciousness means that we reflect outside what's inside. So if we say that Krishna is pride, actually Krishna is not pride. I am proud. So I'm reflecting it on Krishna. So reflective consciousness is the word. Okay, so Krishna is saying this is how he maintains our gross body. Who can live without a sun? Who can live without a moon? Nobody. Gama Vishyacha Bhutani Dharya Yami Hamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Soma Bhukta Rasatmakaha. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply juice of life to all vegetables. Okay, so how come if you throw a very heavy stone in the air, will it stay in the air or will it come back on the ground? You throw a very heavy stone air like that, and then will it come down?
It will come back.
Right? But if Krishna is throwing these heavy planets in the air, they stay there. So Krishna is explaining how by my energy they stay in the orbit. Okay, the so-called scientists are spending so much energy of Krishna in understanding that how it is happening. They can never understand, never ever, because they're not in Krishna consciousness. They'll come up with some concept, and then tomorrow another scientist will come and they'll come up with another concept, and then day after tomorrow some other will come and they'll come up with another concept, and they will never be able to touch what the reality is. But Krishna is saying that by my energy, Krishna has entered the planet. And Prabhupada explains this in a very nice way, that a living body, even though the body is very heavy, let's say it's a body of an elephant, which is like tens and thousands of pounds worth of weight, but it is moving. It's so heavy, but it is moving. What's moving it? The energy of the soul is moving it. Right? As soon as the soul leaves the body becomes heavy again. It becomes very difficult to move the body. But when the soul is inside, the body is light. How come? Because that's the nature of the soul. And then Prabhupada said this line, I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Prabhupada said someone can do research on it. If they want to, if they're not convinced, then you can do research on it, that what is the role of moon. Krishna has explained the moon is supplying juice of life to all vegetables. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashritah Pranapana Samayukta Pachami Annam Chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in every living body, and I am the air of life, outgoing and incoming, by which I digest the 4 kinds of food stuff. So from verse 12, 13, and 14, Krishna is explaining how he is maintaining our gross body, this earth, water, fire, air, ether. So if the fiery element in the stomach is not very active, then there is a digestive problem. There's a problem of digestion in the body. According to the Ayurvedic science, if someone is facing digestion, then they try to ignite the fire of the stomach to improvise the digestion, right? And then the digestion is also happening with the interplay of outgoing and incoming air. Like we breathe the air inside and then we exhale it, inhale and exhale. That also helps. For example, I don't know if you have seen it, but at least in the villages, when there were no gas stoves, the ladies, they used to ignite the stove with the dry sticks from the ground, and then they would blow air, right, for the fire to get ignited. Yes or no? Like they like this blow air.
Yes.
So you see, the blowing of the air ignites the fire. We know that, but same thing is happening inside our body by the power of presence of Krishna. And then it helps to digest 4 kinds of food stuff. Who knew that there can be 4 kinds of food stuff? Let me see if I remember. The foodstuffs that are chewed, licked, swallowed, and drink. Chewed, licked. Are they correct? Anya Mataji, I know you know this.
Yes, Mataji, correct.
Okay, thank you. 4 kinds of food stuff. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanamapohanam cha vedesha sarver ahameva vedyo vedanta krit veda vitteva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart. So far Krishna discussed how he's maintaining our gross body, and now he's going to tell us how he's maintaining our subtle body, which is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego, and also how he's maintaining the soul. So sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. So Krishna says, I'm seated in everyone's heart. Hridi means heart. And from me comes what? Matta, smriti, jnanam. So jnanam is knowledge, smriti is memory, and matta is forgetfulness. So Krishna, this is how he gives the knowledge to the subtle body. He makes us remember something, he makes us forget something, and he makes us he gives us the knowledge. So Namanishra Prabhu explained that knowledge means something which we didn't know, and now we are acquiring something new. Remembrance means that we know something and we forgot about, we know something and we remember it. So it's not new. And forgetfulness is we knew something but we forgot it. So, but Krishna is bringing it out. Vedesha sarver ahameva vedyo. So Vedesha sarver aham eva vedyo. So the out of all the Vedic knowledge, I am to be known. Aham eva vedyo. Vedanta krit. I am actually the compiler of the Vedas. Veda vit. And actually I am the knower of the Vedas. So everything is complete. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Okay, so-called Veda Vidratas, or knower of the Vedas. There are people who say that we know the Vedas. Okay, if you know the Vedas, then you should know the knowledge has 3 things. One is we start the knowledge. Second is we learn what we need to be learned. And third is we come to the conclusion of everything, right? These are the three subtle steps that one has to take to call themselves as complete in acquiring the process of knowledge. So Krishna, if somebody says that I'm the knower of the Vedas, then just ask them, okay, if you're the knower of the Vedas and you've read so many Vedas, what is the end of the Vedas? Problem is that people get engrossed in the language of the Vedas, and then they get like, oh, the end of this Ved is you do this processes to come to fulfill your desire, this way, right? Or you do, but they do not come to the end, which Krishna himself is saying, Veda antakrit. Anta means end, Veda means knowledge. So I am the end of that knowledge. I am supposed to be known by that knowledge. But Krishna remains a far-fetched goal, and people go on labeling themselves on their foreheads very proudly that I'm the knower of the Vedas. I know meditation, I know Ashtanga Yoga, I know this, I know that. Okay, you know, but you don't know it completely. So would you rather go to somebody who knows completely, who knows things incompletely? Or would you rather go to the person who knows it completely? Where would you want to go if you have to spend your time?
Person who knows every end.
Complete, right?
Complete.
Beginning, middle, and end is a complete knowledge. Not getting lost in the middle, or not getting to the middle at all. Correct? That is a sign of intelligence. Where would I go? But we don't use that because kama esha krodha esha rajagun samudbhava, because we have material desires. Person who's not coming to Krishna, or is hesitating to come to Krishna, or comes to Krishna but also does something else, just means a person in knowledge can understand that this person still has some desires which are not in alignment with the principles of Krishna consciousness. So there is a hesitancy. Okay, then it says there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every entity is infallible. I should have put the shloka here because there are some words in shlok which are important. So the fallible, infallible is shara. The word used is shara, fallible. And for the infallible, the word which is used is akshara. So shara and akshara. So Krishna is saying that there are two classes of beings. One is fallible and another is infallible. So fallible, what does fallible mean? Fallible means that one who has forgotten Krishna and come to the living material world, like Krishna bhuliya jiva bhoga vancha kare. So forgetting Krishna, a living entity is desiring to fulfill its desires, material desires. So that person or that living entity is fallible, not just human beings. He's saying two classes of beings. This is Bhagavad Gita as it is. So not human being only. Everyone who's in the material world, every single thing that we see around us is fallible. Infallible is somebody who is in remembrance of Krishna, which is the residence of the spiritual world. In spiritual world, every entity is infallible. Why are they considered infallible or akshara? Because they remember Krishna. They don't forget Krishna ever. They don't forget their relationship with Krishna. Okay. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Lord himself, who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. So Krishna is beyond shara and akshara. Krishna is not in the category of fallible, and it is not in the category of infallible also. He is beyond the two, and he has entered in these worlds, both the worlds, spiritual and material, and is maintaining them. So this is a relationship. It establishes the sambandha of the living entity with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that Krishna is maintaining both fallible and infallible. Mane, even when we go back to the Krishna in the spiritual world, we are still maintained by Krishna. But the difference is that I remember Krishna. I actually love Krishna there. I serve Krishna. I don't have hesitancy in establishing my relationship with Krishna and nourishing that relationship from my end. Krishna also doesn't have any hesitancy to welcome us back. But he says, I maintain you. Okay, so this is the Sambandha Gyan. Yasmaksharam atitoaham aksharat api chottamaha ato asmi loke vede cha pratitaha purushottamaha. So because I am transcendental, beyond both fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the Supreme Person. So Krishna is beyond Shara and Krishna is beyond Akshara. And because he's the greatest, So he celebrated both. He's actually the object of celebration in both the worlds. If we put Krishna in our life now, in this conditional life also, our life actually becomes a celebration because we are living it in proper alignment, without free from dualities of whether I should do this or whether I should not do this. I should do this. I'll do it. I'll definitely do it because that's what Krishna says who I am. Right? So he celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that person. So in the world, Ato Asmi Loke Vedecha Pratittaha Purushottamaha. So in this world, Asmi Loke and Vede, in the book of knowledge or Vedas, Krishna is celebrated as Purushottam or the supreme person. No one can claim this. Can anyone claim this? Proprietorship, rights, or copyrights of Krishna's position? That I am celebrated in both the worlds?
No way. No way.
Higher or lower? We cannot. You cannot, because Krishna reserves that right. Okay, and everyone is dependent on Krishna. And actually, interestingly, the demigods know this fully. That's why they're in the mode of goodness. Mode of goodness means knowledge. So they know this, right? Lord Shiva pays obeisances to Krishna. Indra is paying obeisances to Krishna. All other demigods, they go and pay obeisances to Krishna because they know that that's our relationship with Krishna. Krishna maintains, and Krishna also nourishes everyone, gives them big responsibilities because they are ready. They're ready to accept Krishna's position and accept Krishna's service. They're ready. We don't get that because we are not ready. It's not that there are no services. It's not that there is no relationship, but we have to be ready for it. And we have to be ready, and it's a process to get ready right now. And what is the process? The beginning of the process is chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. If I'm not chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra and I call myself a big scholar, a big devotee of Krishna, there is no standing. There's no foundation. Actually, there is no foundation. Person will not be able to sustain themselves for a long time because they're not begging the mercy. You have to beg it. Okay, so this is Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Mother Earth in the form of the cow. Everyone, when they have some problem, they go and meditate. Brahma goes and meditate on Shweta Dvipa and then seeks guidance from Krishna. Lord Shiva is called as topmost devotee of Krishna. Vaishnavanam Yatho Shambhu. Topmost devotee of Krishna is Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva makes his appearance so many times in Srimad Bhagavatam. I remember 4th canto where he's instructing Prajapatis. And then in 8th canto, in 6th canto, there's a discussion of to Mother Sati, where Mother Sati curses Chitraketu to become Vritasura. So Lord Shiva is singing the glories of Krishna, but we get confused. Yo mam evam asamuddho janati purushottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Whoever, so Krishna is opening the doors to everyone. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is to be understood as the knower of everything. And he therefore engages himself in full devotional service of Son of Bharat. Okay, so action speaks louder than words, right? If I say that I'm devotee of Krishna, then how am I living my life? Am I engaging myself in full devotional service or not? If I'm not, then I'm not convinced. There's a gap between my theoretical knowledge and the application of knowledge. There's a gap because my conviction and my faith is not strong. So make it strong. Not that give it up. Make it strong. In the association of devotees, chanting nicely, preaching Krishna consciousness can bring all auspiciousness in our lives. Is anyone in this class who's waiting for some inauspicious thing to happen in their life and they're working and waiting? When will an inauspicious thing happen in my life? Anyone in this class
No,
would like to
Mataji.
have that?
No, Mataji.
Everyone would like to have some auspicious thing happening, right? Some what is it that's good in my life, or what more good can happen? So this is the best thing that can happen in anyone's life. It's the best thing. There is no comparison. The good, better, and best are 3 relative terms. But Krishna, where we choose the best word because that's the best we can describe Krishna in this world of relativity. But if you put Krishna in your life, then there is no more room for good or better, because you already have the best. Okay, and this is engagement in full devotional service without hesitation, is what Krishna says. If you see that person, and that person is in full knowledge of me, and that person is an acharya. You study the life of Srila Prabhupada, we see this living. We see this instruction of Krishna as living, live in the life of Srila Prabhupada. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. What is the most confidential part of the scriptures? That engagement in full devotional service. This is the most confidential part. O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. So this is most confidential, that engagement in the full devotional service of Krishna is confidential, very, very confidential, most confidential. Guhyatamam. It's not easy for a person to be engaged in full devotional service. The other people, vimudha nanu pashyanti, right, cannot understand that how somebody can be so much engrossed in the devotional service of the Lord. They cannot. They bring their own nitty-gritty assessments of the mind in the middle of a path of a soul. Like somebody takes sannyas, or somebody becomes a brahmachari, or somebody likes to do this and doesn't like to do what others do, doesn't like to go to the pubs, or doesn't like to eat meat, or doesn't like to socialize, doesn't like to waste time in unnecessary travel or spend money lavishly. Then people become like, oh, this person has become a sadhu. Ye to gaya. Right? Do you relate to it? Like we do that to each other? Like, ye to gaya.
Yeah.
This life is gone now. So what is gaya mean? What are they worried about? That this person will not be able to enjoy life anymore. But they're so foolish that they don't know that there is so much enjoyment in this self-realization journey. Krishna is blessing that person. If Krishna is blessing it, we really don't need anyone else's blessing. Now, of course, Krishna is blessing through the mercy of his pure devotees. He doesn't do it directly. And Krishna is himself making this statement: whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Okay, so we should not bring our reflective consciousness onto the lives of other people without understanding what they're doing. We need to understand before we want to be understood. But what happens is that we want to be understood without understanding others. Not going to work. It has not worked. It will never work, and it is not working. Okay, so Prabhupada gives a little big, intricate. This is the last verse of purport of this verse, that he describes that first 5 verses of this chapter describe how a living entity is entangled in the vichitra, or in the colors of this material world, in the banyan tree. Then from verse 6 onwards, the yoga of Purushottam, or of yoga of the Supreme Person, is described. And he also says that one must be captivated by this information, that I can go to a place where there is no death, no birth, nothing. I can just enjoy life eternally. And it is so beautiful that I don't even need a sun or moon for this. There is no scarcity of anything, and there is no anxiety. Prabhupada says we should be captivated, but we are not. We are not captivated, right? Why are we not captivated? What is the filter that's letting us not come to Krishna? Then there's a little bit discussion about the weakness of the heart. In this last verse, Prabhupada gives description of weakness of the heart. That, okay, first weakness of the heart is that the soul desires to go away from Krishna. That's first weakness. That's first weakness that falls down in the material world. Then the second weakness is that we actually desire to lord it to the material nature. So first we desire to go away from Krishna. Second, we not only go away from Krishna, but want to exploit the material nature to enjoy our life on our own. So these are the 2 weaknesses of the heart which are described in this particular purport. Bhakti Vinod Thakur Prabhupada describes 4 kinds of weaknesses in more detail. And then he describes that how each weakness leads to our entanglement. For example, when I am one of the weakness of the heart that I just said is lauding it to the material nature, right? So in the discussion of lauding to the material nature, this is a little bit more detail. Then what happens is that we get pushed by the 6 kinds of airs in the body, like 6 kinds of forces, like hunger, thirst, tiredness, or a need for evacuation. These are like all these. I don't remember the other 2, but these are the things which push a living entity in this world. Who would have thought all that? Before I read all this, before I discussed all this with other senior devotees, I would have never, thought that this is actually a result of the weakness. That is why a self-realized soul doesn't have these needs. A self-realized soul is not pushed by these forces because they don't have that weakness. Their strength of the heart is with the Lord. A very important chapter. It's a very Shastric chapter. I just went over it a little bit like quickly. But if you read each and every verse and if you read each and every word, there's so much meaning and potency. And we read Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita in 10th chapter, which is verse number 8 to 11. But in 15th chapter, there's something called Trishloki Bhagavad Gita, 3 verses, 3 Shloki. That's verse number 16, 17, and 18. It's called Trishloki, where again, the Sambandha Gyan, Abhidey Gyan, and Prayojan Gyan is established. Okay, so we studied this. If you take home at least one thing, that Krishna is comparing this world to an upside down. What is Krishna comparing this world to? Upside down?
Banyan tree.
Banyan tree. Okay, so upside down banyan tree. Urdhva Mula Madho Shakham, the first verse. The first 5 verses are describing that. And at the end, he says, become detached. Asanga Shastrena Dridena Chitva. Cut it with the weapon of detachment. Then transmigration of the soul, from verse 6 to 11, Krishna is explaining how the soul is transmigrating. Pashanti Jnana Chakshushaha, person whose eyes are in the knowledge can see this. Krishna is a maintainer of a gross body, subtle body, and the soul. Like from verse 12, 13, 14 is the maintenance of the gross body, where he says, I become the splendor of the moon, the splendor of the sun, and then how he becomes the digestive fire, how he helps in digestion of 4 kind of food stuff by mixing with the incoming and outgoing air. Then in the subtle body, and then he also gives us the planet. So he enters the planet, the orbit of every planet, and keeps the planet in their orbits. And also in the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and false ego, he gives Matta Smritir Jnanam. And then from all the Vedas, he's to be known. Indeed, he's a compiler and the knower of the Vedas. So he's explaining all this from these verses. And then summary of Vedanta Sutra in the last 5 verses, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, where 16, 17, and 18 are called 3 Shloki Bhagavad Gita. And he says, Iti Guhya Tamam Shastram. So Guhya Tamam in Sanskrit, Guhya Tamam means most confidential. Like there's confidential, then there is more confidential, and then there is most confidential. So Iti Guhya Tamam Shastram. This knowledge is the most confidential. What knowledge is most confidential? That a person who is indeed in Krishna consciousness is engaged in full devotional service. That is most confidential. Okay. I hope everyone is registering for level 2 classes. You are in